I will call the roll after I make the announcement, but let me call the Williams County Budget Committee to order for May 5th, 2020. This meeting is being held pursuant to Executive Order 16 of the Governor of the State of Tennessee. As such, all members of this committee must be able to hear me and each other. We will take the roll of the committee after this statement. If you cannot hear the other members, please notify me immediately. All votes will be done by roll call. This meeting is available to the public on Public Access TV and is streaming live on YouTube. I'll now call the attendance. Commissioner Herbert.
Herbert here.
Thank you. Commissioner Morton.
Morton present.
Thank you. Commissioner Sturgeon.
Sturgeon here.
Thank you. Mayor Anderson. Mayor Anderson. Okay, I don't hear from the mayor. And he is on his way. I just got a message, the mayor's on his way, and then I'm present. So we do have a quorum. We can start the meeting. We do not have any minutes for today's meeting. We are working on those. As you can imagine, working from home, it's hard to do minutes. We do not have any transfers or resolutions for today that I've received. If that is not correct, will someone let me know? I have no resolutions other than the school board request before us today. All right, looking at that, what we have for us today is the school budget, and the format we'll do is we will ask for a motion, put this on the floor, then we'll hear from Jason and Leslie. As you know, if you've looked at the printouts, this goes in various phases. According to our attorney, Jeff Mosley, we will have to vote on the following items: the general purpose school budget, the cafeteria budget, the after-school budget, and the capital request. And we'll discuss those as we go through. Diane and Jeff will keep us straight as far as looking at this parliamentary procedure. And I will try to call on you as I see you. Either you on the chat box, raising your hand, or you unmute yourself and talk to us. Remember, the budget committee will have their first question and answer session. Then when they're finished, any other members of the county commission may ask a question. Does anyone have any questions from the budget committee? All right. What we have before us, that everyone got this electronically, is the 2020-2021 school budget. It's in various sections, as I mentioned, but I would like to have a motion to put this in for discussion for the 2020-2021 Williamson County School Budget. Do I have a motion, please?
This is Commissioner Herbert. I motion to hear the school budget.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Morton second.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is recognize Superintendent, or Director of Schools rather, Mr. Golden and Leslie Holman, that they can discuss this. For the first section, if you'll see, we'll look at the sections, and they can go over the first three sections, which is the overview, the enrollment and positions. And if you have questions, then let's ask them as we go. And then we'll get to the point where we have to take a vote. Do note for the minutes that Mayor Anderson is present now. We have a full attendance. So, Director of Schools Golden, would you and Leslie like to start, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you all for participating and doing your work. From my perspective, the public service that you're doing and the value of it has really just been emphasized so much over these last couple of months. So I want to thank you and especially thank the mayor. I don't think anybody has any grasp of the volume of work he's been doing and leading us through so many myriad issues, not just school issues, but so much more that the county's working with. So I want to thank you guys first for that. I want to give a little bit of history of where we were with the budget. Back on February 24th of this year, Leslie had prepared and submitted to our board a draft budget for next year. It had included growth plus some strategic planning. We had actually intended to have our budget meeting, right about the time COVID-19 hit and schools started closing, just for those first few days where nobody knew for sure where we were going to land. So as a result, we delayed that meeting. A few weeks later, I had a conversation with the mayor, and it became apparent that that there was going to be a lot of unpredictability for you all, especially on the revenue side of the budget. So we had a pretty detailed conversation, and he may want to speak to that. And so that led us to go back to the drawing table, and Leslie started from scratch with our budget based on what I think of as a continuation budget, plus teacher growth only. So to give you some broad numbers, on this current year's budget that we're in right now, the revised budget amount is 392 million and change. We had actually originally proposed to our board a budget of 407 million and 888,000 and some change. And after Leslie revamped, based upon our conversation with the mayor and some multiple conversations with our board, we took to our board a budget for 395,952,320, which is 3.5 or so million dollars more than our existing budget. And again, that's to address teacher growth. So those are the broad numbers and the approach that we've taken in response to the challenges that so many of us are facing with COVID-19. And I already mentioned that it's been written and designed to address teacher growth only. I will tell you that because it's so small that we don't know over the course of the year where our needs might come up as things come up. And you all know over the course of the year we'll come to you often with some requests to use some of our fund balance to modify the budget based on immediate needs. You know, a common example is special education. I do anticipate that over the course of this year, if you all pass this budget, assuming the revenue sides will support it in the future, we may come to you with a need that we've cut out of this year's budget because we've been trying very hard to make sure we respect the volatile position everyone's in. So that's my introduction, Mr. Chair. Since you gave Leslie permission, I would like her to speak to that introduction and then to our enrollment as well.
Thank you, Jason. Leslie?
Well, as noted in the introductory letter, I give you some of the information that that Rogers usually asks for, how many of our positions are not funded by the budget, which right now, even with cutting out all the positions that we asked for other than growth, there's 563 positions that are not covered by the BEP formula. I got an email today that the May BEP will be out next week. And so the number that I'm using in this one was was actually my projection plus compared to the one I got in April, which are relatively close. So we're using that BEP figure. We're using Nina's penny as of April. And the ADA adjustment had been made time, so it's representative of what it will be out throughout the year. The only thing I really need to say, because our three major funding sources are the sales tax and property tax. The two, the BEP and the property tax, are what they are. And unless we have people not paying their property taxes, and I don't really think during this time we're even experiencing that, my April collections, even though I haven't received them from the trustee, is higher than what I expected to get for the current year taxes. So I feel like our property tax number will be a good number. The BEP number is given to the state. They're not going to reduce it other than if my enrollment reduces, but I think it's secure. So I think more people have a question about the sales tax forecast. In the sales tax forecast, and the one that I did at the beginning of January in forecast, it was probably $6 million more than what I'm putting in this budget. And I had reduced it to this year's projection. I do feel that I had projected for my fund balance at the end of this year. I don't think that sales tax number is going to be reduced that much, but I did reduce the amount of money that I was projecting for sales tax to come in line with if we're in a continued situation like this COVID-19 for a great period of time. Again, with the property tax and the pullback on it of 8%, if the number comes in even less, we at least have that cushion to deal with by the end of the year if it comes to that. So again, this budget was pulled back. I'm able to fund it, no property tax increase. And it will also afford me a fund balance that we'll be able to use during the year in case the situations of needing new personnel go beyond what we've already forecasted through growth. So preliminarily, and again, the board approved last night the cafeteria and the ESP budget, the extended school program. Cafeteria is going to, both of those are self-sufficient funds and get their revenue through fees. When we shut down, it shut down those programs. We are continuing to pay our employees and care grant to pay the cafeteria employees to the end of this year, which for most of them will end May 18th, I believe, 18th or 21st. Jason would know that day better than me. And then we will not pay for the rest of the time for that. And we haven't determined next year what would happen if this continues to go on. It is bringing the school cafeteria fund down to a very, very, very bleak fund balance to start the year with, but at least I'm projecting them with a slight fund balance of about $10,000. The extended school program fund will have a small fund balance to begin the year, but again, their expenditures work off their revenues. So as the revenues don't make, then we cut back on our expenditures. We may have to lay off employees. So other than that, that's a preliminary review of the budget as a whole. Our capital, we did readdress that. Originally, it was $13.5 million. We went back and tried to bring it in line with what you gave us last year. The amounts that we cut out were not wants, they were needs, but we really, really, really cut back down. And it could possibly mean that some of the maintenance work that we needed to do, we would still have to come back for fund balance and try to get some repairs made that we had to cut out. So that's the whole budget is a synopsis, and I can start you through, or Jason can, through the enrollment projections in our PCR, which is our position control report, or we can get right into general purpose school. It's up to you.
Thank you, Leslie. As Jason mentioned, Mayor Anderson, if you're on now, Jason wanted to know if you had any opening remarks before we get into the details with going over the enrollment numbers and starting there. Mayor Anderson, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say, first of all, thank you to Jason and Leslie for jumping on this and then sending it back out to the school board and their unanimous vote on this. I think all of us realize, given the certainty of what's going to come forward over the next few weeks and months, particularly in the area, I'll echo what Leslie said, in the area of sales tax, is the only thing that really gives me a little heartburn. And we just don't know those sales tax numbers at this point. I concur with her, checking with Karen. Our property tax is holding up and the penny is generating what it's generating. So thank you to school board for jumping on this. The bottom line that I had a conversation with Jason was that take last year's numbers and put in your growth numbers, and I think everyone realizes that you've had one school to come online, the Gosi Hill Elementary School, I forget the name of it.
Creekside.
Thank you. It came on in January, and then we have one additional school that will come on at Henpeck Lane, the middle school, that will be opening in in August of this year. And so we needed to allow for those growth of those positions of those two schools. Overall, and through a caption that Leslie has put down, I've read it several times. I see nothing wrong with it. She did indicate in your considerations on the first page, if you go down through it, how she got to where she got on some of her budget numbers by decreasing the amount of textbooks over last year by about $4 million. I will tell you that, and thank you for that, Leslie. I will also tell the board that we're fine on our health and dental insurance. The downside of being out of work and everyone having fear, they've not been going to the doctor. Now, we may catch up on the backside, people not having physicals and things like that, but our dental numbers that we have used for the last several years, they're locked in. Mainly because our claims, which we pay the claims out of our fund. Gina does upstairs through Nina, and those are looking very good. So I'm comfortable with that. And I don't have a clue about Chromebooks at being at $1.5 million, but I think all of us realize if this continues on, or it should stick its ugly head up again, COVID-19 or COVID-20, whatever it's called down the road, we're going to need more. More Chromebooks, and we're going to need some of those air cards for our rural area, because I seriously doubt that we'll get all of the lines open. And I'll let Jason and the school board deal with educating our children, but we can't continue keeping our children at home and teaching the method we are. I know that's very difficult on those teachers. I know that's very difficult on the administration. But at the end of the day, we've got to find a better system than what we've got now, and I know they're working on that, so I can support that. As far as the cafeteria numbers, I'm going to ask two questions, Mr. Chairman, if you don't, two questions about the cafeteria central and the extended fund. Leslie, in both of these numbers, I'm showing for the central cafeteria fund of $14,557,636. Is that a correct number? You can nod up and down, yes. And then on the extended school program fund, which is $7,153,988. Thank you. So both of those are correct. Mr. Chairman, you can certainly go through this. We may get a few extra dollars from the state. That's all based upon growth. But I do want to remind everyone, we basically said take the numbers that you've got, move them around, satisfy what you've got to have, but don't come in with any extra money other than growth. And Leslie and Jason and the school board have done that. And so with that in mind, don't forget the Central Cafeteria Fund and the Extended School Program, they're self-funded programs. She'll have to adjust that next year if their numbers don't come in. That's their job. And the only other thing I saw in there, you will have a slight cafeteria food cost increase next year. Is that correct, Leslie?
Cafeteria is having a fee increase, yes, but the ESP fund is not.
Okay. So with that, Mr. Chairman, you can fire away your questions, or if you want to get the school board issue over with, vote for it today.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Anderson. Are there any more questions or comments from the other members of the Budget Committee before we let the school folks start through there? And if I'm hearing the mayor correctly, since there's very little change, we may focus on the changes, but I want to hear from the members of the Budget Committee before we go forward. Anyone have any comments or questions at this point?
I do, Paul Sturgeon.
Commissioner Sturgeon, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure, maybe we need to be talking about it another day, but I just can't help be curious about the capital 5-year projection thing. Have we decided to slow down our construction of new schools into?
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that as best I
Go
can.
ahead. Yes.
I've had some conversations with Matt Largen about growth. Based upon the information he's given me, at least in the short term, he hasn't heard anything from businesses based on the window of time we've been through that those larger businesses are going to grow. But I will tell you, as we project for this coming year, I do believe that it's a little less predictable this year than it typically has been. So we're projecting 1,013 new students. The most recent time we've had recession, and we're not at a recession, but I was trying to find a way to triangulate this. We actually had a slight increase in our student population, more than we expected because of private schools. And so I just tossed that out to tell you that this particular year is going to be a little bit less predictable than normal. I do believe, obviously, some folks have slowed down moving in this window of time, but the other side of that may be volatile as well. On the 5-year capital plan, we have not taken it to our board to make any changes since we took it a few months ago. But what we experience for this fall is going to drive our decisions related to that for the 5-year capital.
Mr. Sturgeon, does that
Okay,
answer your
so
question?
yeah, so unfortunately, I'm on the phone and another call came in, so I missed the very, very beginning of what you were saying. Are you saying we're not changing the capital forecast for building new schools until we get to this fall? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. We do that 5-year capital plan on an annual basis. And what we have right now is a lot of uncertainty. And so we're looking to see how our projections this year shake out. The two sides of it, the growth that we project coming, plus the potential for additional existing students here, minus the possibility that we may have some moves. Short answer is yes. From a 5-year capital standpoint, we're not projecting. We're not recommending any changes at this moment. We're going to let our fall enrollment drive that.
Okay, well, are we starting new construction on any projects?
Mark Samuels is here with me. I'm going to let him address the items that we are working on, and it's based on the funding that you all have already provided. The vote that you had a couple of months ago, we have not started any of those projects, but the existing projects that we're working on include finishing up the new middle school, Legacy Middle School on Henpeck, and in addition to that, we have a couple other projects.
Can I address something really quickly, Jason, about this?
Yes.
During the budget process, a lot of times the 5-year plan and our capital requests are commingled when we're talking about them. And we try to explain every year, the capital requests that we're asking during the budget process really represents things that we would have had in our operational budget. We've done it for the last 20 years and before I've been here, to put them outside because they lasted longer than and could be, if needed, by either our fund balance, which years ago we did, or funded through a bond resolution or note. This is in addition to our operational budget. It is not like a new huge building project that comes to you at a different time in the year. We have to give it to you in a statement form in January, but we come to you periodically throughout a year with an intent to fund for those projects. Those are separate from what we consider the budget process. But the capital that we're requesting this year is the same capital that, had we not started this way of funding these needs outside of the operational budget, would have been included in the operational budget. And again, this year we're asking for almost $10 million. You gave us 10 million the year before, 13 million the year before that. So it is in addition to our operational budget and not considered part of our 5-year plan, which the 5-year plan consists of building new buildings and adding additions, whereas this is more maintaining our buildings outside the operational budget.
Well, that's right. We're not making any requests today with our annual capital requests. We're not making any requests today for the 5-year capital. Sorry, Mr. Webb.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie and Jason. Commissioner Sturgeon, what the point they're making is we're not talking about the schools today as far as the new schools. And so if we can get back to the question we've got to vote on 4 things this afternoon. And what I'm wanting to hear from the budget committee is, do we want them, Jason and Leslie, to go through each item like we have, or knowing this is a flat budget, let us put these in play. As a matter of fact, we made the motion. We have the general purpose school funding budget on the floor now, which we can continue to discuss that. And if you have any questions of the school officials, let's direct it that regarding the general purpose school fund. And then when we get past these 4 voting items, maybe we can discuss some of those other issues, or they can be more one-on-one. So if we're talking about the general purpose school budget at this point, and thank you, Jason and Leslie, for explaining the schools and our enrollment. I would again ask the budget committee, we have in our sections that was handed out to us, we have items about the enrollment and about positions. And then we'll go into the general purpose school budget. Do you have any questions from Leslie or Jason regarding the enrollment numbers or the position numbers at this time? If not, we'll go on to the general purpose. Anyone on the budget committee? All right, thank you. What I'd like to know, we have a flat budget essentially for the growth, the $395 million plus almost $396 million is essentially a flat budget, and unless things change. Leslie noted about the revenue. We don't know what the state legislature is going to do. We don't know a lot. So does the committee wish to go forward with their explanation, or are they ready to take a vote on this proposal, the $395,952,320? If you'll let me know, we'll take as much time as we need, but I want to hear something from the committee members.
This is Commissioner Herbert. I'm okay
Yes, go
with
ahead.
taking a vote. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I just have a couple of questions about the budget that Leslie would like to answer it for me, or Jason.
Go right ahead, Commissioner.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. One thing is the cleaning of the schools. I see where it increased this year. Concerned, I get a lot of complaints about the people that are cleaning the schools, that they're not doing a very good job. How much have y'all studied hiring in-house housekeeping? How much would it increase?
So we did a study on that. I'm approximating about 2 years ago. Leslie may have the details of it. It was a combination of a money number that Leslie may remember, plus purchase of equipment. Of course, our contractor owns all that equipment. Leslie, do you have a total number that you can recall based on our study? I'm really not comfortable enough to get the exact number.
When we did the study, because we would have to hire on as many employees as they had and then pay for the benefits, that kind of stuff, and the equipment, the initial year was double the amount that was in the budget at that time. And again, we've had a classified pay chart in which pretty much put everybody a little bit more into market conditions, which at that time when we analyzed the janitorial, it would have been at a lesser market rate. But again, I would assume that it would cost us, one of the reasons they decided years ago to go to contracted services is that it did save them a lot of money. But when we did a couple years ago, it might have even been 3. It was about double what we had in the budget for just the contracted services. What's included this year for the additional increase is the additional school, actually another half a year for Creekside, because Creekside, we only budgeted for half a year. So we've got a full year for Creekside and a full year for Legacy in there this year. And then also just probably a 1.5% increase, because when we do the bid out on that, we usually do it for 4 to 5 years and have a yearly increase of about 1 to 2% in there.
And Commissioner, of course, over the years, we've heard those same concerns. We actually have 2 WCS staffers who review and have a pretty programmatic process to improve those services. They actually go out at night. Some of them have night. A couple of them that do that include mixing in some night hours for review. But you're right; it's a constant challenge to maintain that that high level that everyone expects. I do anticipate that we have the potential this year to do some more disinfecting for obvious reasons on a daily basis, a little more so than the traditional, sweeping up and cleaning.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbert, do you follow up?
Yes, and so when y'all did that study, did you include these employees as full-time with insurance? Because a lot of them could be hired as part-time without the insurance.
Well, we did a mix, and so we have the day porters, which would be full-time employees, and then we did some math on the night crew. If I recall correctly, the structure we had when we projected that, we did a combination of part-time and full-time based on the existing staffing that our contractor had. We had two big variables, if I recall correctly. One was the benefits, because none of those employees, as I understand it, at the time at least, had benefits. Of course, the Affordable Care Act just came in right about that time. And then the equipment purchase, because we would have had to start from scratch. So it would have had a high startup cost plus a higher expense for us on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you. I just hate that because I think a full-time employee or part-time by the school system can do much better job, because from what I gather, they're not doing much of nothing, but I understand if it's that much difference. And I got a couple of more questions. Leslie, it's under Office of Superintendent, number 72320. And it's got in there other salary and wages. What is that for and why did it increase?
What page is that, Commissioner Herbert, on our handout?
20.
Thank you.
That is the safety person. It is Allison, it is our zoning person and two other people that I just, I don't have their names in front of me, so I'm not able to tell you that. It's probably because one of them wasn't there all of that year. If you're seeing the increase from the middle year to the next, and there's somebody completing a full year. A lot of times there's an increase. It's because one wasn't filled out or a person left and a new person's come in, and the rate of pay is just slightly different. There's because the budget was 293 in the original, and we reduced it to 288 for the, and it's now 304. And possibly also because in the classified, there is fifth year, there is a roll. There isn't like the teachers where they roll every year, but in the fifth year and the new way, when we classified plan, there is every fifth or sixth year, there is a bump. And so someone in that line item may have received the bump. Our computer system generates the numbers for these people. But I think if you look at the PCR, there is no increase or a person put in there.
Okay, thank you. I got one more little minor question.
All right, just let us know the page number as well if you're referencing in the handout.
This is not a reference, this is a comment.
Thank you.
I've had somebody complain to me, why are all the school lights on at nighttime? And I'm referring to Creekside. Is there a reason that there's so many lights on at nighttime on the schools?
Well, that's a good question. We do, for safety reasons, maintain our lights. If we've heard the complaint, we always check the lumens to make sure that it's as low as we can. Those elementary lights are designed to be energy efficient, but I do recall when we opened Clovercroft, they did strike folks as a little bright, and so we actually had altered those lights. I'll ask Mark Samuels to double check that with his staff.
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. I don't have any more questions, but I just want to thank Leslie and Jason for doing such a great job and going by the guidelines that the mayor set. Thank you. This is probably the easiest school budget I've ever dealt with since I've been a commissioner. Thank you.
Well, and I will tell you, Commissioner, our board, they have a really good grasp of what's going on in the community, and so to a person, they recognized the importance of this as well.
Before we take another question or comment from the Budget Committee, Mr. Golden, will you tell us, or Leslie, what is the number student enrollment that you base this budget on, please?
Jason, you telling them? It's
Yeah, I'm
1,013.
gonna tell them. Yeah, so we're projecting a growth of 1,013. The total projected enrollment at month one is 41,761.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Budget Committee members, anyone else have any questions? We're on the general purpose school budget at this point. Anyone else have any questions?
Paul, this is Roger.
Yes. Go ahead, Mayor.
I'm going to take a little issue with Jason and on this number, only because Jason's a greenhorn. And I hate to call our superintendent that, but I don't think, I think they are doing it on the numbers were pre-COVID-19. I'm saying you're probably going to have a couple of hundred more children coming from the private side of schools like occurred in 07 and 08. I have all the respect for their numbers and what they've done. There is no way to base this. And back in those days, for the commissioners were around, we had no track record in which to base this on. And I don't have any hard, fast number, but the last time we did this, we had a couple hundred, maybe 300 students. So I'll only caution us to say we may see larger numbers, but I think their numbers were indicative of that time in January and February when they were putting that together. Jason?
And Mr. Mayor, yeah, I alluded to that earlier. I think you're right. That was 2009, I believe, when that recession hit, and we did have that increase from private school. And it's that completely unpredictable number, right? And so I think that's a real possibility. It's possible we may need to come back to you in the fall with some teacher positions based on that. But in the interest of maintaining that conservative budget, we felt like it was important to stick to these numbers for y'all's purpose at this point. Yeah, I lived through that. You're 100% right. That did happen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Golden. Budget Committee members, any questions or comments on the general purpose school budget before you? Okay, anyone else? Any other commissioners have a question before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Are we ready to vote on the general purpose school fund? Jeff, tell me, I believe I have that motion already approved and seconded on the floor. If not, speak up, and I will take the roll call vote at this time. This is for the general purpose school fund, $395,952,320. Commissioner Herbert, how do you vote?
Herbert, aye.
Wait, can I, my copy says 395.
Thank you. Commissioner Morton. Well, Leslie. Okay, let's go back. How much do you show?
It shows
You're cutting out on me.
Same, I have the same thing, Leslie.
395, 925, 769.
Okay. Would you read that again, Leslie? 395.
925, 769.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Herbert, does that change your vote?
That didn't sound right, but.
Okay, that's
I thought I
the chairman's
misunderstood
fault.
you. Okay, aye.
Wrong number.
Herbert, aye.
Commissioner Morton,
Commissioner Morton, aye.
thank you. Commissioner Sturgeon,
Sturgeon, aye.
Mayor Anderson,
Anderson, aye.
Commissioner Webb votes aye. That passed unanimously. All right, now we'll go. The next one is the cafeteria plan. And Leslie, would you, let's see, first I've got to get it on the floor. I'll make sure our numbers are right. Do I have a motion to approve the proposed 2020-2021 school cafeteria budget?
Sturgeon, motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Herbert, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Leslie, will you give me the number we're talking about? Looks like I've got 14,557,636. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
All right, thank you. That is on page 28 of our handout. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Leslie went over that in her opening remarks. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we're ready to vote on the cafeteria fund of $14,557,636. Commissioner Herbert, how do you vote?
Herbert, I.
Thank you. Commissioner Morton.
Morton, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sturgeon.
Sturgeon, aye.
Thank you. Mayor Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Commissioner Webb votes aye. That passed unanimously. Next up is the after-school program. And I'll get the number here when I get my machine rolled down here. And Leslie, give me that number. Is it like 7 million? What is the proper number?
7,153,988.
7,153,998.
988.
988. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So after school budget of 7,153,988. Do I have a motion for approval?
Approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sturgeon, second.
Thank you. Again, you heard Leslie's comments earlier. Does anyone have any questions or comments? If not, ready to vote on the after-school program of 7,153,988. Commissioner Herbert, how do you vote?
Herbert, I.
Commissioner Morton, how do you vote?
Morton, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sturgeon, how do you vote?
Sturgeon, aye.
Mayor Anderson, how do you vote?
Anderson, aye.
Commissioner Webb votes aye. That passed unanimously. Next item up is the section 7 in our plan is the education capital outlay. This is not about new schools. It's just capital outlay of $9,936,647. Do I have a motion for approval?
Herbert, motion to approve.
I have a second.
Sturgeon, second.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Gold or Ms. Holman at this time on the education capital outlay?
This is Commissioner Herbert. I'm a little leery voting on this at this time until we know a little more about our revenues. Can we postpone this for another month?
Mr. Golden, Ms. Holman, you want to respond to that, please?
Sure, Commissioner. From our perspective, of course, ultimately you all are going to vote on this full budget in July, if I'm not mistaken. I will tell you that now more than ever, the technology requests that we have are extremely important. We need to be prepared for the possibility of this happening again, and the mayor alluded to that a little bit in our operational budget. Obviously, you've got to make decisions on capital. I'll defer to your decision on issues related to interest rate and how you fund it. But we started out with, Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around 14 million in our original request, and so we've already culled it down to the items that we feel like really need immediate attention. And of course, some of it is building improvements such as flooring and plumbing and that kind of thing. But again, the technology improvements are really becoming critical because we see a different world ultimately from what we expected just a few months ago.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbert?
I guess I'd like to refer to the mayor and ask what his opinion is with the budget and the revenue coming in.
Thank you. Mayor Anderson, can you respond to Commissioner Herbert?
I can, and before I give my 2 cents worth, I know Nina's on here. Nina, you want to chime in and kind of talk about some of the things we've talked about in capital?
So this is in line with what they typically ask for year after year, and we're finding that on the county side as well. Computers and networking issues. what we've been through the last few months, these are more needed than ever before. As far as our debt service budgets, they fall in line with our plan that we've had the last few years. So as far as we're concerned, we're still moving forward with our programs, with the 5-year plans. Our models have not changed significantly. One item that we look at is the privilege tax. That seems to be holding up at this time as far as the funding for the debt service funds for the upcoming budget. So on the county side, we are going through our budgets, looking at those and pulling back as well, just as the schools have done.
If I could jump in just for a second, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
The question is on the continuing revenue side, and the comptroller, the AG, several state agencies have weighed in on the ability of the county commission and the county mayor to make modifications to the budget after it is passed. So if you pass this budget and get to September and find that the numbers aren't quite what they are, you still have the ability to amend the budget later in the year. And that's not a prohibited action. In fact, we amended quite a bit, but in this case, it could be amended down if the revenue wasn't coming in. And in fact, there's even a power on the part of the mayor, if the revenue falls short, that he can use a power called impoundment to reduce the cost of certain items to match up with revenue later in the year if you're having a problem with that. Hopefully we don't encounter any of those, and those are not tools that are used very often, but we are in an unusual situation. So you still have some tools, even if you take this and pass it as a budget, coming back in July, August, and September once you see where the revenue is.
Thank you. That's good. That's good information to have.
So go back, Mr. Chairman, to Commissioner Herbert's comments. Let's go ahead and vote this, get it off our table. Looking at revenues, we've still got, this is May, we're still looking at a couple of 60 days. I think it's, go ahead, it's not going to change any more than what we do a month from now. So I would recommend we go ahead and do it. And then if we need to peel back on that at the July meeting, we'll certainly do that. And I appreciate Jeff jumping in and talking about some of these extra powers the AG is opined on, and that gives us some layers of cushion too. Hopefully we won't need that.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Herbert?
Yes, I appreciate that. Since we can still adjust if we have to, but needless stating that right now she feels like we'll be able to fund it. I'm okay with going on with the vote.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the Budget Committee?
Hey, Paul, I have a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner Sturgeon.
If I could just get a quick description of the last 3 items, 579079 OE vehicles and other capital outlay general, what are those monies for?
All right. Jason, Leslie, can you answer that for Commissioner Sturgeon?
So Leslie, if you have that handy, I'm in the process of looking at those last items. Oh, okay. So I've actually found it.
Okay.
Leslie, those actually are a new time clock system. We're moving to the cloud on our time clock system, and Leslie can give the description of why we need that as they're going out. So Leslie, if you would.
Have we lost Leslie?
No, I muted myself.
Okay.
Yeah, the time clock system, we use, I can't remember what the name of the one we use like right now, but they send us a bill saying this is your bill for next year, and it was like $70,000, and we hadn't been paying like $14,000. So we also had become displeased with that and had decided, well, we're going to look at some other ones that have come in about the same amount as what now taking us to the cloud would be. We do have to go to the cloud with them, but only for half a year. We're putting it out to bid to put a new time clock system in. And that's one of the related costs to it, is buying the equipment and things like that.
And then the other entry is growth furniture.
Growth furniture, we have always put this lately into capital for the last 3 years. A few years ago, you asked us to take all the capital out of our budget, and we did, and we have, because this remains at over $100,000 each year. It's replacement of broken and growth student desks, and we have it in there every year.
Okay, so
Mr. Sturgeon?
that's which line? 910, 900?
$799, $795, $799. 320 line.
I was looking at the last three. One is 910, one is 900, and one's 79.
Okay,
for
the 79 are vehicles for the maintenance department and for the transportation department.
Okay.
Mileage and replacement. And the other 79, 110, I've got to go look for that. Yeah. I don't know if
Okay.
it's-
So the time clock thing is other capital outlay.
Yeah, all of
That's
it's
right.
capital outlay, yeah.
All right.
It's a large expense.
Well, the clocks are 70,000 and the rest of it is much more than that. So,
Well, actually, the clock, it's a replacement. What we received from our current provider is a bill that they were going to start billing us annually, as I understand it, for 70,000. And we had been paying a 14,000 support bill. So this is actually a change that in the long run is going to be cheaper for us.
okay. Maybe you could send me an attachment on an email that just broke down those three
I'll do
items.
that.
Okay.
I'll
All
send
right,
that.
thank you.
Also, I'll send Ms. Herbert, who's in that line item that she asked about.
Well, and we'll make sure we just include everybody on that.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any more questions or comments from the Budget Committee? Anyone else have a question before we vote? All right, what we're voting on is capital plan of $9,936,647. Are we ready to vote? Mr. Herbert, how do you vote?
Herbert, aye.
Mr. Morton, how do you vote?
Morton, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sturgeon?
Sturgeon, aye.
Thank you. Mayor Anderson?
Anderson, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Webb votes aye. Thank you very much. I want to make sure, Jamie and Diane are checking notes. We have voted on all four of these items today. We passed them all. And I think that's all the business we have. Mayor, do you have any other comments this afternoon?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do. I'm going to put Leslie back on the spot. You indicated earlier we're going to have a meal price increase. Can we get that into the minutes, please? What that, or Jason, whoever wants to do that.
Yes, I will let you. This one.
I've got it, Leslie, unless you want to share.
I've got it. The elementary breakfast will go from $2 to $2.25. The elementary lunch will go from $2.90 to $3.25. The middle lunch and the middle school breakfast and lunch are the same increase. And the high school and the high school lunch are the same increase. Everything goes from $2 to $2.25 for breakfast in all three schools. And all three lunches go from $2.90 to $3.25.
Thank you very much, Leslie. And Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes.
if I could call upon Jason to give us, he has been doing some outstanding reporting to mayors. We have conversations with all of our city mayors, city managers, and legal staff 3 times a week during this period of time. And he's been sharing some information with that, and he won't have the number, Franklin special, but he will. Your mic's on, Leslie.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
It's
Hey,
on
thank you,
now.
Mayor. Jason, did you hear the mayor's question?
No, sir, I did not.
Mayor, would you repeat that again? Jason didn't hear all that.
Yeah, that's Jason. What I was asking, would you share with the commissioners some of the food programs and what all you all have done throughout the system? I don't have the numbers for Franklin Special, but we've got several of our county commissioners. They should be very proud of what the Franklin Special has done and what you have done with the money and the time, and particularly our cafeteria staff.
Sure. As you all know, there are lots of families who've been struggling. And early on in this event, early on, of course, was 2 months ago. It's not that long ago. The USDA allowed some districts to start giving single lunches with a commitment to reimbursement. We did not qualify for that. So we initiated a program where we were actually providing boxes of food to families. And we have been doing that these last few weeks on Saturdays at Chapman's Retreat Elementary and Westwood Elementary. And now we're doing that at Longview Elementary, and it's really open to anybody. And so I'm going to email you the thousands of pounds of food, that exact number, because I don't have that in my head. But we have been giving each Saturday hundreds of food boxes to families. And it's been a combination of contributions from charitable institutions to us, plus our food service budget. So we've been spending that food money on food to give to families. And the folks have driven up, picked up food. The way we designed it was so the folks could have basically a week's worth of canned goods, of fresh produce, and then what James Remedy, our food service director, called fun bags, which might be some extra bags of chips and those kinds of things. And it's I'm trying to remember, Mark, off the top of my head, just kind of an approximation on the numbers. The volume of it's incredible. I've gone out there and helped. We typically on a morning basis at each of these sites unload 2 full truckloads for cars that drive up. And it's typically varied between 150 and about 200 or so families on a weekly basis who come and pick up those boxes.
Thank you, Jason.
Mr.
Anything
Chairman,
else? Yes,
well,
go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I want to say thanks for Jason and Mark, and again, the food supply. It would have been real easy for us because we didn't qualify not to do anything, and that just shows the compassionate of all the school personnel. And hey, our first priority is our children. It's the right thing for us to do, to be helping people during this time that their children are not getting fed properly. So I wanted to just personally let Jason, if you will, send that out. That the school board should feel very proud of that, and you as county commissioners should feel very, very, very proud of that. That coupled with what Franklin Special is doing, and I'll see if I can't get David Snowden or Jason, if you wouldn't mind, to send a little mail with that. We put it together. It's an amazing amount of food, time, and energy that has been put into this community. And my hat's off to him. That's all, Paul, that I have to say. Thanks for the great job you did on the school budget.
And so, Mayor, I actually found the numbers while you were speaking. As of last Wednesday, before last Saturday, my numbers are a week old. And over 150,000 pounds of food to about 2,100 families.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up, because the Franklin Special School District, as we know, has fed thousands of meals. I think the number was yesterday. So they've been doing this all through the pandemic. For the Budget Committee, do we have any other business for today's meeting? I'll note our next meeting is this Thursday, May 7th at 3:30 p.m. If we have nothing else, I will call for an adjournment. Is there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. See you Thursday. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.